Welcome to Leading Thoughts from LeadingAge, New Jersey. I am Michelle Kent, President and CEO of LeadingAge, New Jersey. We advocate for and represent nonprofit, mission-based senior housing, senior facilities like skilled nursing, assisted living, home-based care, all across the state. This is yet another in an ongoing series of broadcasts that we bring to you to keep our audiences informed on senior issues that are relevant and current for the state of New Jersey and beyond. Today's guest is Carol Silver Elliott. Carol is President and CEO of Jewish Home Family, the parent corporation of a number of programs all located in Bergen County: skilled nursing, assisted living, home care, and other programs. I don't know if I've missed any, Carol, but it's quite a large system and one of our strongest members. While Carol is relatively new to New Jersey, she brings a wealth of experience from all over the country, many very significant positions, and she notably is on our LeadingAge board nationally. So welcome, Carol. It's a delight to have you.
Thank you.
One of the many areas of expertise that Carol has is elder abuse, and that's what we're going to be focusing today's program on, elder abuse. It's a topic, frankly, Carol, that's very troubling. It's very troubling to me because I used to run DIFAS, the state's child welfare system. So abuse of children, and in this case, seniors, is a horror. It's a societal shame that's often hidden.
Absolutely true.
And once in a while, there's some high-profile case, of Mickey Rooney or something like that brings attention to the issue, but then it seems to go back underground, as abuse often does. So I wonder if you could just talk to us about what it is and what you think causes or the contributing factors.
Sure. Elder abuse is a pervasive issue in our society, unfortunately, and it's an international issue. Yeah. But in the United States alone, they estimate between 3.5 to 5 million people are victims of elder abuse every year, which is a staggering statistic. Yeah. The definition of elder abuse is really an intentional act of harm at the hands of a trusted caregiver. And it's not so much that we're talking about, that horror of facility-based abuse, but we're talking about family-based abuse. Right. This is domestic violence, but it is not intimate partner violence. It is domestic violence, most often a child or grandchild, occasionally a spouse, but it is any form of abuse, whether it's exploitation, financially, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. All of those play into our definition of elder abuse.
So here it is, our family, and abusing seniors in the family who have nurtured them, and in fact, we should be treating with utmost love and respect. What do you think the contributing factors for this? I'm sure there are many, but...
Well, I think elder abuse is like any other form of abuse. You mentioned child abuse earlier. I think for many of us, the idea of abusing a child, abusing an animal, abusing anyone vulnerable is anathema, but yet it happens. Right. I think one of the things that's significant about elder abuse is that it's very much underreported and underrecognized. You know what better than I that in this country the conversation about child abuse has been elevated to the point where if your child goes to a pediatrician, thank goodness, with something suspect, they ask a question.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When we go to the OBGYN, they say, do you feel safe in your life? Is there anyone harming you? But so often, our older adults, that whole topic is ignored. No one asks the question, and if they end up in the emergency room and they're there with their adult child who is the abuser, and the older adult starts to talk about where those bruises came from, the abuser says, she's so clumsy, she's always bumping into things, when the reality is there's an abuse situation taking place.
Yeah, to make a lot of sense to me that they just are in denial, and that the doctors and others who are supposed to be looking out for this may defer to the family's opinion, thinking that the elder is, frail and just cognitively impaired in some way.
There's a little bit of ageism, I think, that happens
I'm
there
sure.
too.
Yeah.
The risk of elder abuse increases the older people are. So over 85 is higher risk. Female, of course, is higher risk. You know, the more vulnerable someone is, the more the opportunities for someone to abuse them. And I think with the financial pressures of today's world, and unfortunately substance abuse often plays a role, I would tell you that in almost 100% of cases of elder abuse, financial exploitation is either the beginning or the ending, but it's always part of the equation.
Well, that's fascinating. I didn't know that. Wow. So what should we do about this? What can we collectively, individually?
That's the best question. There are a couple of things I think are really important. You know, there is a very grassroots movement taking place in this country for shelters for older adults. Wow. And at the Jewish Home at Rockley, we are going to be opening the 12th shelter in the country. So I told you there were 3.5 to 5 million victims, but 12 shelters is not a lot of shelters for all those victims. Any one of us can open a shelter. It makes perfect sense to open a shelter for older adults within the walls of a nursing home or an assisted living. You know, the system of shelters for domestic violence is a great system, thank goodness, in this country. But it doesn't meet the needs of a frail 85-year-old. I just toured a shelter last week in Bergen County for battered women. It's a fabulous program. Yeah. It's in a dormitory that's 3 floors, all stairs. You can't take an elder and put them in that kind of setting, and there are little children running all over, which is great place for them, but not a great place for our older folks who need perhaps medical care, different kind of socialization, other kinds of services. Many of the victims are very debilitated, need rehabilitation, need other things. But we have a place. We already have those things. If we have a nursing home bed, the Cora shelter is a bed. If you put a victim in that bed and keep them there long enough for them to heal and help them plan for safe discharge, then you've taken a huge step at addressing elder abuse, and that's really what we're going to do.
It sounds like a natural, but how do you get, I don't know if this is the right term, guardianship or whatever that you can...
Well, you know, you don't always have to get guardianship.
Okay.
If guardianship, obviously if someone has cognitive impairment and guardianship is required, there are lots of partners that can help you with that, and we will be working with some of our local social service agencies to make that happen. But a lot of these people are competent. I can tell you from personal experience, having opened a shelter in Ohio, a lot of these people are competent. They're stuck in a situation they can't get out of.
And they willingly go.
And that's a really good point as well. We're not in the kidnapping business. Someone has to agree to come to shelter.
Right.
Unlike domestic violence, where the conversion rate from referral to admission is about 50-60%, in elder abuse, the referral to conversion to admission is 10%.
Wow.
So many of these folks won't come to shelter because they don't want to give up their home.
You're right.
They don't want to sacrifice their relationship with their abuser. They're ashamed because, after all, this is my child. I taught them their values. I taught them everything, and they're abusing me. And there's a lot of reluctance, and they're ashamed and embarrassed. There's a lot of reluctance to come to shelter. But when they do make the decision to come to shelter, it's usually because they feel that they're in such danger. They're so afraid. I mean, I've seen some terrible, terrible incidents of people being abused to the point where they feel that this is all they have left.
And do you encounter the family resisting the person going in?
You know, what's really interesting is in pretty much all the cases, by the time the person comes to shelter, the abuser has already taken everything from that person. They don't come to shelter. They don't try to break them out of shelter.
They do not.
They ignore them.
Wow.
And often there's another child, or often another child, who has no idea that this abuse is taking place. So placement near that other child or having them come and get engaged is very feasible.
And for those of us not running systems that might, be able to accommodate some abused seniors, the average person on the street, is there anything to...
Absolutely. The most important thing is see something, say something. I can tell you that if we all sort of search our minds as to people that we encounter or have encountered, there are probably folks who are being abused at some level. changes in pattern, changes in demeanor, changes in interactions with folks. Whether it's the bank teller that, Mrs. Smith comes in every week and cashes her $50 check and suddenly she doesn't come anymore and the checks are bigger. We've had grocery clerks make referrals. I had a beautician in Ohio make a referral because she had a client who was wincing every time she moved. And it turned out that she had been abused and Adult Protective Services got involved. There's always an opportunity to make a difference if we choose to do it. And the other huge piece, I think, for all of us that work in older adult services particularly, is to help educate. It's so important for us to say, elder abuse is real. It's happening all around us. We need to be aware of what the warning signs are. We need to raise the level of community conversation. Again, 40 years ago, child abuse was not something we mentioned, but today it's on everybody's lips and everyone's aware. Elder abuse needs to be at that same level.
Right.
Kathy Greenlee, Assistant Director of Health and Human Services, once said at a conference on elder abuse I attended, she said, the system of domestic violence shelters in this country, which is a very strong system, grew out of the efforts of survivors. She said, our older adults will either not survive or not have the wherewithal to do this for themselves. So I think it's incumbent on all of us not only to create shelter, but to create conversation that says we recognize that elder abuse exists, we want everyone to know what to look for, and we don't want to tolerate it in our society.
When you say see something, say something, to whom is the best source to say?
Really, the first line of defense in most communities is Adult Protective Services.
Okay.
They are very present, they're in the community, they're aware. That's a very good place to start. But also, to talk to any of us who are in the shelter movement. And there's an organization called the Spring Alliance. That's all the shelter partners, about 14 of us now working on shelter across the country. There are lots of resources out there that people can tap into. But start with APS because almost every community, they're prepared to be of some assistance.
Okay. Anything else you think we ought to know? I mean, this is just such a sobering topic and yet critically important that I'm so glad you spoke to us today because certainly compared to even animal abuse, as you were speaking, it's become much more high profile and child abuse certainly. And I think senior abuse is just needs to get elevated to that same level. It is a scourge of society.
It is indeed.
Certainly I'm delighted that you were able, even though it's a painful topic, to share it with us. And hopefully all the viewers here, if you see something, you will say something. And we should all think about those of us in the senior care industry, certainly should think about shelters and anything else that might help to alleviate this problem. And education, as Carol said, is critical in that regard. So, Carol, thank you. Hard message, but an important one, and I very much appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So to our viewers, again, thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts, like to sharing any information with us, please do that. If you'd like to know more about LeadingAge New Jersey, visit us at our website, leadingagenj.org. You can follow us on Twitter at LeadingAgeNJ. And I'm Michelle Kent. I really appreciate you watching. Thanks.